You know what time it is. West to East podcast. This is it. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Mnemosyne. Here we discuss ancient texts, creation myths, and translate them into historical terraformation and astronomical events. Please note most things that I discuss here today are completely theologically, scientifically, and astrophysically heretical. With that, welcome to Galaxy of Eden Part 2. I am just happy to be recording for the fourth time. Check your mics, people. But I'm almost done with this episode creation, and it's been a journey. I'm really excited to continue this story with you. I feel like it's been ages since I released episode 1, and I appreciate your patience. This rendition of Adam and Eve requires a lot of specificity and elucidation, and I wanted it to be perfect. So, first things first, if you have not listened to Galaxy of Eden Part 1, it's going to be a lot easier to follow Part 2 if you listen to it in the order that it was created. Second things, I have made one significant change to the podcast this episode. My designation of the word storytellers in episode 1 was used to reference a group of people in ancient civilization that did survive a cataclysmic event and recorded it for us in this Adam and Eve story. So storytellers is the word I was using. I will be using the word instead. No, I'm not going to use the word instead. Instead, I'll use the word Mnemonides. 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 Giving it a unique name will give it clarity, as someone pointed out to me. If you did listen to part 1, it has been quite a while, so we'll do a quick recap. We're following Genesis 2 through the Mnemonides' eyes as they survive this multi-event terraformation cosmic reordering. They start by personifying the birth of the atmosphere, naming him Adam. The point of personification is to assign human traits to non-human systems in order to make the information easier to remember. So here they've personified Adam. In their model, Adam, the atmosphere, forms from the dust and particles lifted into the sky during ocean boil-off. Ocean boil-off occurs when there's no atmosphere, explosive evaporation gets triggered, and there's extreme solar exposure happening while Earth is axially locked. It's not rotating on its own axis. That means the Mnemonides are not having a 24-hour day. They were used to something more constant and less frequent. So once the atmosphere forms, the dust particles in the air have a refractive effect on the light rays coming towards Earth. That refraction allows for not only the visual perception of land, but the visual perception of the planets and nearby stars. That turns out to be where the Mnemonides first discover the zodiac. The biggest detail about Genesis 2 is the Mnemonides' use of the designation Lord God. They imply here that this Lord God personification is a non-stellar host body that the Earth is orbiting around. So Earth is, in this story, a moon. Today we're finishing Genesis 2 and 3. We're going to finally name what this Lord God planet is, what the tree of knowledge is, the tree of life is, and what sin actually means in all of this framework. Just like last episode, I'll go through verse by verse. I'm using the English Standard Version. We left off part 1 at Genesis 2:24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. In Mnemonites terms, this is not marriage advice. It's how they memorialized, how they honored the moment that the atmosphere forms enough to join Eve, to join to Earth. That union was so foundational to their survival that they ritualized it. So this is the history of mankind's oldest ritual, is because the atmosphere exists. Earth's gravity. This matters because Earth's gravity is strong enough to hold an atmosphere long term, unless something catastrophic strips it away. So they've survived an extinction level event where Earth had no sky, no breathable air, no color, no stable surface life. The sound was traveling strangely. If they endured that, they were likely forced underground for multiple generations. So this kind of trauma doesn't just become a story, it gets etched into DNA as survival memory and passed forward. So the atmosphere returning changed everything for them, the amount of oxygen, the light dispersion, abundance. So for them, marriage wasn't this romantic thing. It was a relief thing. Now mankind did not have to pursue all these short-term mating strategies because now there's abundance, and pair bonding is easiest when there is abundance. So this is the moment where mankind seems to have deliberately made a choice or reacted to an event that brought on pair bonded unions. This is like a historical moment. Moving to verse 25, and the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So this isn't some freaky statement on a part of the Mnemonites. They're not trying to get down with the atmosphere and the earth. The etymology of the word ashamed goes all the way back to the Egyptian word kem, which is Egypt's oldest name for itself. Kem in Egyptian means black or black land, which had a double meaning. One was a reference to its dark soil and a reference to darkness. So in the context of terraformation, ashamed means experiencing the hiding of the face of the earth in darkness. So what verse 25 here is saying, that because Earth isn't rotating on its own axis, it's not having day and night. Moving to verse 3. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" So this verse is saying a lot. Let's identify the serpent first. The Mnemonites are indicating here the serpent is among the beasts of the field, and that's a reference to the zodiacal path. There's no snake. There's technically no snake in the 12 zodiacs. So now we have to look at technicalities, because technically there are 13 and a half zodiac constellations. And this 13th constellation's name is the serpent bearer, Ophiuchus, and it literally holds up the constellation Serpens. So the snake is the constellation Serpens. And what made Serpens so crafty out of all the rest of the 88 constellations in the sky? This one took me a while. This one took me a long time to figure out. The text says that the serpent spoke to the woman. So this could mean one of two things. First, the stars that make up the head of serpents could have been pointing downwards towards Earth so as to look like it's speaking at Earth. And that could explain how it spoke, but not why it was crafty. So a better explanation requires some context. Modern-day skies, as viewed from our ground, show the galactic center to be in the constellation Sagittarius. Sagittarius is relatively close to Ophiuchus and Serpens. And remember that our galaxy is spinning. The gravity from that spin is what we call the galactic tide. It acts like a weak gravitational incline across the solar system. The galactic tide is responsible for mild orbital perturbations that currently affect Earth's orbital path but does not pull it off path. A perturbation is any non-central gravitational nudge that pushes an object off a perfect orbit. Sources of perturbations include passing stars, molecular clouds, dark matter subhalos, planetary interactions, resonances, and these perturbations typically produce eccentricity drift, inclination shifts, orbital energy changes, and potential ejection from the solar system. I said all of that to drop this. All of Genesis 3:1 is indicating not only was Earth's orbit being perturbed by the galactic tide, that those perturbations appear to have been more effective to Earth's orbiting path, and way more important, here's where that context comes in, the galactic center was located or appeared from the Mnemonites' perspective to be in the head of Serpens and not in Sagittarius at the time. And that is how it appeared to the Mnemonites that the snake was crafty, hiding something, and speaking with Eve. So the snake is hiding the center of the galaxy in its head, and the perturbations from the spin of the galaxy are talking to Earth. This means we not only have a historical reference for the precession of the galactic center, but also a visual reference for the axial tilt of Earth at the time that the Mnemonites experienced these events. This is galactic history. Now on to the question that the snake asks her, and we're still on verse 1. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden?" So the key here is that the serpent says God and not Lord God. That is a deliberate reference, and Eve mirrors that in verse 2. The word Lord God in Hebrew is Yahweh Elohim, and it means something personal, relational, covenantal. It's all combined with cosmic authority and power. That's the meaning of the name. Elohim is similar, but it signals distance. Divine authority is still acknowledged, but the relationship isn't as personal, relational. And the serpent here is framing a different God than the Lord God. So what am I pointing out? Eve is tracking two authorities, Yahweh Elohim and Elohim. She's tracking two authorities over her, two gravitational authorities. So what God could this be? The most coherent candidate for the God that the snake is referencing here is the sun. It's a farther away authority, it's higher, and it meets all the conditions of the definition of Elohim. So now Genesis 3:1 reads like that encoded survival astronomy. The snake functions as Serpens' constellation with the galactic center implied at its head, positioned so that it appears to address Earth, which means an axial inclination of greater than 30 degrees. The speech from the snake symbolizes the galactic tidal influence and external perturbation pulling on Earth's path and stability. The snake's question, did God actually say, is the signature of orbital confusion. The snake's confusion is showing not only the distance of the Serpent's constellation from Earth, but it appears that Earth is reckoning with competing gravitational pulls and distance distortion. Moving to verses 2 and 3. The woman said to the serpent, "You may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." The Mnemonites have framed the galaxy as a wilderness that they've called Eden. Inside that wilderness, they placed a garden, our solar system, and the trees in that garden are orbital bodies and their paths. So when the text implies survival is tied to staying in the garden, for the Mnemonites, that means Earth's habitability was only guaranteed as long as Earth stayed bound to the correct tree, meaning the right orbital host. So eating isn't any kind of moral metaphor. It's probably an older and more technical language, meaning closer to subsisting from, growing from, remaining within the influence of, staying on the vine. Eating could also read like movement, something passing from one side to the other. In this case, Lord God planet rises on one horizon and sets on the other. Following that logic, for the Mnemonites, they preferred that Earth stay as a moon. That's what they knew. That's what would bring them survival. So these two verses are essentially Eve responding to the serpent's disturbances, the perturbations from the galactic tide, which are his questions and his confusion. Earth is slowly losing its ability to maintain its current path. Astrophysics effectively dictates that a satellite's orbital path is subject to the accumulation of the gravitational forces that push and pull against it. Once the combined magnitude of those forces is greater than the magnitude of that satellite's vector. So Eve keeps responding to the perturbations and is also trying to separate two different commanding gravitational forces, one being Lord God planet, the other being Elohim the sun. So if you think you know what the tree of knowledge is, don't spoil it. Moving to verse 4, but the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die." That statement is an indication that pressure is spiking. The Mnemonites are using the snake's contradiction as a way to indicate that the pressure on Earth, the pressure on Eve is rising. So there's significant perturbations from the galactic tide, and Earth is now caught between Lord God planet and the sun, and these perturbations are tugging at Earth's path. So the "you will not surely die" statement is doing two things at once. First, it implies that Eve or Earth wouldn't die the same way that Adam or the atmosphere would die. And second, it implies the death that is involved isn't final, it's phase-based, a shifting through states, but not permanent annihilation. Moving to verse 5, "For God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So the snake continues to contradict the other gravitational forces. 6, "When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate." So the phrase "when the woman saw" indicates here that the tree was not something she could constantly see, but when it was visible, it was very beautiful. Have you guessed it yet? Yes, the tree of knowledge here is a direct orbital path around the sun. So the sun is a delight to the eyes, it gives daylight, wisdom, and the fruit of the sun that is being referenced in verse 6 is the harbinger of dawn, the light bringer, the morning star, Venus. So this is the first Venusian rise for the Mnemonites. This is the This is Venus rising from one horizon, one of Earth's horizons, all the way up to the top of the skies. It appeared to come from Eve, and Eve appeared to give it to her husband, Adam, and it passed from one side to the other. So they ate it. First, they're naked in a garden, and now they're eating strange fruit that they found on the floor. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the real fall of mankind, or a literal rise, a Venusian rise. Moving to verse 7. Then the eyes of both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loincloths. So Adam and Eve can see that they are naked with all the extra light. In verse 7, the word eyes, the etymology of that word among ancient languages repeatedly maps to the same root concepts: aperture, shining surface, watery gaze, and cosmic seeing. So the Mnemonides are alluding that there was an increase in the spectrum range of light all across Earth due to the new, more direct angle of sunlight exposure, as well as increased humidity. And the fig leaves that they sew together, there's only one natural cycle I can think of that the earth and sky do together, and that's make clouds and thunderstorms. So they're sewing these clouds together, the earth and sky. These might be the first clouds the Mnemonides have ever seen, depending on how long they went without an atmosphere. Since Venus and the sun have completed their first pass through the sky, the heat from that pass increased the humidity, and then the subsequent darkness has lowered the temperature. Solar proximity kickstarted axial rotation. We're moving to verses 8 and 9. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day, because the sun has set. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But when the Lord God called to the man and said, "Where are you?" he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself." So the earth's face is like turning away from the Lord God planet as it rises in the sky. Lord God planet calls out to Adam because he's not where he's supposed to be anymore. And remember that the creation of Adam, or the atmosphere, doesn't just allow for light dispersal, it allows for the sound to travel upon the surface of the earth. That line, "I heard the sound of you in the garden," the perception of sound depends on pressure, temperature, and composition. Before Earth's axial rotation kicked in, sound would have behaved differently. Some frequencies would carry and others would not. But once rotation starts and solar exposure changes the atmosphere, the pressure gradients change, the heat distribution changes, and the whole acoustic environment changes. Not to mention the overall stress of the entire event that is upon the earth. There was probably loud sounds happening, violent thunderstorms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and it could have been they could have been that they perceived the sound of Lord God planet since Earth was still close enough. Moving to verse 11, "Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree which I commanded you not to eat?" LGP is still speaking here, that's Lord God planet, which tells us it still has some active gravitational influence over Earth, even as Earth is being pulled towards the inner solar system by the sun. The strain of all of this doesn't pull Earth out of LGP's orbit entirely in one go. It doesn't decouple in a single tug. There's been now a pause and a disruption to Earth's normal revolution around Lord God planet, but it's not entirely decoupled. Verses 12 and 13. "The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me fruit and I ate. Then the Lord God said to the woman, 'What is this that you have done?' The woman said, 'The serpent deceived me and I ate.'" Playing the blame game now, guys. This section really just advances the narrative to the next scene, but it kind of fits the the physics. The cascading blame mirrors all of the cascading of forces that the Earth is undergoing, the pressure, the perturbations. It's like kind of reaching a crescendo, if you will. Moving to verse 14. The Lord God said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. So this section is structured totally different than the rest of the story, and that is intentional as well. So far, Genesis 3:1-13 has been a straight narrative, dialogue, action, reaction, storytelling. But the following verses, 14-19, switches into judgment, oracle structure, compressed legal cosmic language. It structurally matches Mesopotamian curse formula, and it's written like a system update. It's not written like an argument or a punishment. So this curse formula has 3 formal pronouncements: one to the serpent, one to the woman, and one to the man, and each follows the same pattern: direct address, cause, and consequence. There's no back and forth, just okay, this is the new reality. These curses here from verses 14-19 are considered etiology. They explain why the world works the way it does now. So this is a cosmic enforcement script, not a worldwide punishment for all humans. So we'll kind of dissect this system update now. The first line, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. So livestock, beasts of the field are references to the zodiacal path and the rest of the constellations. So serpents is singled out as being more altered than the rest of the constellations. On your belly you shall go. That is a positional shift. The Mnemonides are watching the galactic center move from the head of serpents into the belly of serpents, in the belly of the beast. Same constellation, new alignment. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your lives. This is the Mnemonides stressing that serpents is unearthly, that it doesn't need anything to subsist, since now the galactic center sits in the belly of the beast. The next line, I will put enmity between you and the woman. That enmity is spacing. Lord God planet, in its last gravitational authority over Earth, appears to be altering the axial tilt of Earth. Earth is being pushed further away from Lord God planet. The Mnemonides' view of the sky is becoming totally alien to them. The next line, and between your offspring and her offspring. So since Earth is re-angled, a figure appears over serpents. So what constellation would that be? Eve's offspring, but close to the snake's offspring. The next line gives us more of a clue. He shall bruise your head and you shall bruise his heel. There's only one constellation near the head of serpents that appears to have a foot sitting on top of it, and that is Hercules. Foot to head, that snake is biting his heel forever. The snake's offspring is Scorpius. So they're saying that that Hercules seems to at first have been parallel with the serpent's constellation, but because of the change in the sky, Hercules now rises above with its foot on the head of serpents. So, permanent reconfiguration of the sky. Moving to verse 16, to the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain and childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desires shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. We already know that LGP is changing the axial tilt and reorienting Earth. This verse is the axial acceleration clause of the system update. This is stating that Earth's rotation seems to have been speeding up, or that they knew it was going to inherently speed up to a certain point. The sky then is giving birth faster. Constellations are rising and setting night after night. So in Mnemonides terms, that's like pain, pressure, instability, strain. And the atmosphere remains above Earth at all times. So no matter how fast the Earth spins, it'll never reach the sky. But it looks like it's trying to reach it. Next, verses 17 through 19, the ruling conditions for Adam. And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. The atmosphere is adapting to the new order of day and night, the increased solar exposure, and the increased humidity. We already mentioned it's having violent thunderstorms due to that solar exposure creating the humidity. But now Lord God planet is passing by and is cooling down the environment. Cursed is the ground because of you. So the ground is cursed to rotate, and the sweat is weather. Thorns and thistles are like wild outputs, famine, harsh conditions, freak weather, catastrophes, and you shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face. That's still a reference to weather going across the night sky. The sweat of your face you shall eat bread. That's a reference to the sun passing through the sky as if the sun were bread. The sun is hot and it causes sweat. And then till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. That's a reference to the side of the earth that the sky is coming out of, that the sun is rising out of. It comes out of the ground, or it appears to come out of the ground. So for out of it you were taken, and then you will return to it. Dust you are, baby. Moving to verse 20. The man called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all the living, or the birther, the uterus. The Mnemonides are, of course, talking about how the sun and the stars and the moon all seem to rise from one side, where she gives birth, Eve. Verse 21, and the Lord God made for Adam and his wife garments of skins and clothed them. This was so tricky. This took me a while to figure out too. This is a marker of atmospheric layering. Later traditions called it a water canopy. As I said, the humidity was rising, but since the sun sets, darkness falls, it cools. Whatever water that is explosively evaporated up into the atmosphere becomes caught up there because it freezes. And that is how the water canopy is created. So the Mnemonides are marking that the Lord God caused this on his last pass through the sky, depending on how long that lasted for them, which sounds like it would have been weeks to months. So what gave away the fact that this is the creation of a water canopy in verse 21? It's mostly what the Mnemonides don't say. They never describe the oceans directly. It suggests that they weren't a coastal civilization. They were either like landlocked or in a mountainous region, so they did not, the sea wasn't within their immediate view. But globally, the conditions I mentioned previously would imply violent tidal tectonic disruption, rapid evaporation, freezing water in the stratosphere. So the garments of skins aren't just fancy clothes. It is an encasing crystal snow canopy thing. And moving to verse 22. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now lest he reach out his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So LGP is announcing the new reality. Adam, the atmosphere, and Eve have become like one of the Elohim. They're operating inside the full polarity of a stellar orbit. They're no longer a moon. They're a planet. They know good and evil because they know the polarity of day and night. The warning about the tree of life matters. Earth appears to be falling towards another tree or planet that would in the Mnemonide's eyes, stabilize Earth's orbit. In this verse, it seems as if Lord God planet has stopped that from being a possibility. So LGP appears to push Earth away from this other tree. Verse 23, therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. That's not a farming reference. That's another axial rotation reference. The ground from which he was taken, from dust you are, to dust you return. The Mnemonides are now experiencing day and night, like Kid Cudi. Verse 24, he drove out the man, and at the east of the Garden of Eden he placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So a cherubim in this reference is not a full Elohim. So it's not as big as an Elohim, which means it's another satellite type of celestial body. This flaming sword is a reference to the largest volcano in the solar system. Have you guessed it? Have you guessed the cherubim with the flaming sword? It's Mars. Mars has the largest volcano in the solar system. It's called Mount Olympus Mons. It's a technically dormant volcano. But who knows, maybe it'll erupt in 2029. So Mars is pushed by Lord God planet along with Earth closer to the inner solar system, and Mars becomes the guard to the tree of life. So we can kind of, from the current order of the solar system, guess that the tree of life that Earth almost fell into was Jupiter. Now for the final reveal. Who is this Lord God planet? I will give you a hint. There's a Greek myth about him eating his children, and no, it is not Kronos. It's Uranus. It gets me every time. Every time I do the end, this is my 4th time recording. Every time I do the end, I can't be an adult about this at all. But Uranus is the Lord God planet. And from now on, I'll probably use the Greek term for that name, the Greek version of that name, which is Ouranos. So Ouranos is the Lord God planet. And the effects of this crazy gravitational decoupling event is noted in the planet's strange axial orientation as well as its backwards rotation. Uranus is all kinds of weird, and Uranus is too. So that is the big reveal. That's Genesis 2 and 3 complete. That's Galaxy of Eden Part 2 done. Thank God. I want to ask you this. What kind of gravitational torque event could have caused such cosmic upheaval? You'll have to find out. This I'm going to keep it a secret for as long as possible, actually. Please stay tuned, stay perky, stay hard for the next episode that comes out. I'm going to do it on Genesis 4. It's going to be about Cain and Abel. The continuation of the story is pretty crazy too. So I'm really excited to do this one. I've already started on the script. I'm calling the episode Eden's First Murder. So stay tuned for that one. That one, I have no idea. I hope I'll see you soon, guys. I hope it'll be like only a couple weeks and not 4 months, but who knows?